Hello, everyone, and welcome to another week of The Fan. Not the Matty Johns podcast. No, this is The Fan, but there is a reason that we're in the podcast studio is because the one and only Matthew Johns is our special guest in the fold-out chair tonight. And I've got to say, I'm a little intimidated because he's a great interviewer, Matty. And there's so much to ask him, both from his life growing up in Cessnock, his rugby league career, all the things he's done post-football. And yes, I know he has a pretty famous brother who was a hell of a player in Andrew. But Matty Johns, let me tell you, was a damn good player in his own right.
Here's Matthew Johns. Oh, great stepping off. Both left and right foot. Got it back to the teeth and Harrigan plunges over.
Newcastle is starting to threaten. Matthew Johns, straight through Johns.
Davis to Matty Johns, kicking, chasing Johns. Regathering, Hughes. Oh, Davis, try time again for Newcastle.
Andrew Johns to Matthew. Gidley. Well, Swan beaten pointlessly again, and they pick up their third try. Matthew Johns this time.
Well, this is the moment on The Fan. The one and only Matthew Johns. Thank you.
Great to work with you again.
Long overdue, this interview.
Yes.
And this could be as random as any chat we've ever had on the show. Because there's so much I want to ask, and I have no order to it at all. So
Right.
you fine with that?
I'm happy with that.
I'm going straight to the yearbook of 1997,
Yeah.
where page 103, headline reads, Matthew Johns kicks Newcastle into the grand final. This is 1997,
Yep.
preliminary final, beating North Sydney.
Yes.
A great moment.
Yep.
The next page, I go to a great day for the greatest game. This headline should have been Matthew Johns kicks Newcastle to grand final victory.
Yeah.
Can we start there?
Yes.
97.
What's really interesting, the reason why I like Andrew was the goal kicker, but I took nearly all the field goals because when we were growing up as kids, I was a good goal kicker. So Andrew, we'd go down the park and he would practice his goal kicking and I'd practice field goals. And so that was sort of our arrangement during games, that, you know, I didn't step on his toes, but when it came time for the field goal, that I'd take the field goals. What was interesting about that, we beat, I might have been 16-all or something against North Sydney, and we kicked the field goal to get through.
Well, it's 12-all.
12-all.
You kick the field goal for 13-12.
Yep.
Then Owen Craigie scores from a short kick-off. But it's your field goal that wins it.
What was really interesting was that, as you know, grand final week's pretty chaotic, and Ray Martin came up Channel 9 to do a story.
Name dropper.
And, and Ray Martin's sitting there, and Ray Martin says to me, he wants to interview me about, I've kicked the field goal to get the team into the grand final. I said, yep, and he goes, I'm going to give you a scenario. Matty, with 5 minutes to go, the score's a level. Okay, you're working to the last tackle, what do? Do you go for the field goal again? And I say, yes. And he says, do you kick it? And I say, yes. It hit the post.
You did have 2 shots, but it's the second one that hits the post.
It's the post.
History would be rewritten. Newcastle ride at home from there. You win 17-16. Now, I'm going to ask you another question on that.
Yeah.
Rewrite history for me. What if your brother doesn't go the short side, Darren Albert doesn't score? What do you think would have happened at 16-all and you go to extra time? What would have happened?
Could I give you a story just on why Andrew went to the short side? Because me and Andrew used to sit all the time, and great Alan Bell, who brings a lot of halves through, he used to give us like 3-hour videotapes, just go sit down and watch that, and just try to pick up tendencies with teams and what people do. One of the things me and Andrew would sit together and we'd share notes and go, what about this? And you notice centres always do this. One of the things we always picked up was that wingers, of course they're not used to being at marker, didn't know didn't know marker play, didn't know the rules of marker play. Even if you're right on the sideline, always show and go, because they're very rarely at marker and they always make the wrong decision. And as history turns out, Hopper was at marker. But what would have happened if I'd have kicked
Well, no,
the goal?
I'm saying if it's 16-all at full time, and it
Goes
back in
extra
those
time.
days, it's not Golden Point. You would have played
Extra time.
as the Raiders and Tigers did in '89, 20 minutes. What would have happened? A hypothetical.
I did feel like during that game that we were getting on top of them. There was a point in the game, it was 16-8, and then we got a we got a penalty where as Andrew was lining up the conversion to make it 16-10, Adam Muir looked at me and said, "We're going to win this."
Okay.
It was just that feeling that momentum was going
So
our
20
way.
minutes of extra time, no dramas. Newcastle would have won. Matthew Johns might have scored a hat-trick in the extra 20. Who knows?
And that grandstand would be the Matthew Johnston.
That's it. Now, let's put the book to one side. I want to go back to right to the start of rugby league in Cessnock and the upbringing. See, when I was a kid, anyone who played first grade rugby league was a star.
Yeah.
Was it even more so for you growing up in Cessnock that anyone who even played for Cessnock was a star?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
It was, and because, as I've said to people before, you know, in Cessnock growing up in the 70s, there were two institutions, the Cessnock Goannas and the Catholic Church. And often two would cross over. I was, in first class at school, I was taught by a nun in her 70s called Sister Bede, who was a rugby league fanatic.
Right.
And when Dad used to coach a little later, Sister Bede would sit up in a convent and be able to look over the creek to Cessnock Sports Ground. She'd pray to St Patrick during the game. But she would get me up sometimes to go, "Matthew, can you just come to the front? I want to talk about your homework." And we'd just sit there and she'd talk about rugby league tactics and why did your dad pick him and things like that. So it was, myself and Andrew growing up, that's all we ever wanted to be.
Pinch yourself where you are now. You know, you've played a career, New South Wales, Australia, premiership winner.
Yeah.
Now, post-football career, big success story. Is there a moment early on that turns things around for you?
The biggest life-changing moment for me was, I was a Liverpool fan growing up, Liverpool Soccer Football Club. And I remember those massive years when Craig Johnston went there. And I remember getting his book that Neil Jemison wrote called Walk Alone.
Okay.
And I knew what I wanted to do in life, Vossi, but I didn't know how to get there. For my whole life, I didn't even make the Maris brothers until year 9, didn't make the school football team.
Right.
Andrew was always the natural and I had to work at it. And I remember picking up Craig Johnston's book and just being that inspired by it, how he was the third best player in his team in Lake Macquarie, had a dream and how he got there. And I remember finishing the book and then turning it over and starting again and realising that if you dedicate most hours in the day to your dream, it'll come true.
All right, well, let's jump ahead now to first grade career.
Yep.
Now, I'm going to go a bit all over the place here, but this is my mind-blowing stat from your career. I reckon you had one shot at goal in your entire first grade career.
Yep.
Incredibly, it comes on one of the most remembered nights in the history of Newcastle. It's the night of the Chief Spud collision, 95.
Yes.
That's the only night you ever shot a goal.
Andrew left with about 10 minutes to go. We scored a late try and I had a kick from near the sideline.
And
I missed it. I missed it.
That was the only shot in the career.
That was the only shot. Yeah, that was it. I didn't like goal kicking, Vossi. I didn't like the responsibility.
I can't remember, and a crowd of over 32,000. What a moment, though. What could have been? What could have been? Your career's a what could have been.
I know. It still is.
Jumping all over the place. I mean, people need to know that from your career, you actually retire at 31.
Yes.
Like, to me, and now, and playing in the halves, again, hypothetically speaking, if you had stayed at Newcastle, if you hadn't have gone to that season at Wigan and then come back a season at Cronulla, do you think you might have played past 31 if you had been the one club man?
No, I don't think so, Vossi. Thinking about my career, because I wasn't a natural player, I had to work a lot harder than most of the other blokes. You know, I used to get, honestly, I'd get frustrated by Andrew, looking how little he would put in and how good he would be. And there'd be little things like, I remember one day in 1996, with the game on the line, we were playing the Dragons, and Andrew just caught a ball and went bang, bang, beat two blokes. And I said to Joey after the game, because I used to always like to analyse things, and he took on David Barnhill and he beat him, he scored. And I said, what were you thinking? How did you set up that whole set? And he goes, "Mate, I wasn't. I just looked up and thought, geez, Barnhill looks tired." And that was it. And
play what's in front of you.
And so for me, by the time I got to 31, not only was the body starting to pack it in from all the sort of extras that you do and the knees were playing up, but Vossi, just mentally I'd had enough.
Yeah.
Like for me, the things that I had to do through the week to play well on a Sunday, I think by the end I just got, I'm sick of doing it. I'm sick of having to do it week in, week out.
If we can just get one last question when it comes to rugby league.
Yep.
And I ask this sincerely, I really want to get into your heart here. I want you to rattle off 3 moments
Yep.
that mean the most to you.
First one would be playing at Wembley Stadium. Okay. Because, getting up in the middle of the night, I remember watching Ozzy Ardiles and Ricky Villa playing for Tottenham back in the old days, the FA Cup finals, getting up at 1 a.m. Never missed an FA Cup, never missed a Challenge Cup, the Rugby League at Wembley. And to walk on, I remember the first time in 1995 in the World Cup, walking on to the Wembley Stadium and the whole ground, the old Wembley, it was shaking from the noise and the crowd was singing Land of Hope and Glory. And you had a real sense of the old empire.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, just going, yep, incredible. Second one really stands out was in 1994, not long after I got to first grade, got picked for the country origin side. And I remember walking into we went down, it was a Belmore Oval, we walked there, Chris Anderson was the coach, and I remember walking in with Chief to the country origin sheds and sitting there, and all around me were my heroes. So Ricky Stewart, Glenn Lazarus, Laurie Daly, Bradley Clyde, all these guys, and just going, oh my God. So anyway, I just find myself sitting in between Lazo and Ricky, and they're talking across me, and I'm sitting there, and at that point in Newcastle, I'm on 12.5 grand for the year. I think I'm flying themselves. That's not good. And they're talking about their contracts.
Nice.
And Lazo's saying, mate, I'm just about to extend my deal, and he's talking about, 400, 500,000. I remember thinking to myself, I think I'm being shortchanged here. Number one now is the 97 grand final.
Yeah, of course it is, yeah.
And my great memory of it, Bossy, was that I remember jumping on the bus for the ride home and going, and it's always a roller coaster. Sometimes you're jumping on the bus on the away games, you've been beaten, coming back from Sydney to Newcastle on that bus ride. And I jumped on the bus, and the bus was quite serene, and it felt like any other bus ride on the way back from Sydney, but we'd won. And it was it.
It was a trophy.
Then we got into the city centre, about 100,000 people there, and it was just, it was unbelievable.
All right, last one for the chat. Is there something that you want to reveal to us now that you'd still like to do, that you've got? Is there a whiteboard in your mind that I've got, this is what I'd like to do? Like you've been to movies, you've television shows, is coaching an itch you want to scratch? Is there something there? Or something bizarre? Is there some random fact you're going to throw out there about yourself and your future?
Fossey, I don't know. I'm actually at a good place right now. I'm really content. I'm very, very happy with my life. And I don't know whether sometimes that can be a little unhealthy. People say you've always got to have goals and dreams, but to be honest, I'm happy. I'm happy with done my life. Every night, I'm content. I get up in the morning, I'm content. And that's a good place to be. I enjoy coming to work, and I enjoy going down to my local. It's funny, the older you get, people relate to this, you sort of, in my spare time, I very rarely venture more than 500 metres from the house.
You're just happy to talk about the weather these days and things like that.
Bore people to death, just walk down, Colliery Beaching Services, walk back.